Hello, everyone. I'm Stacy with the TPS Southern Region at MTSU, and welcome to another one of our how-to videos. Today, we are going to talk about how to find motion pictures online at the Library of Congress website. And by motion pictures, I mean, short movies or even full-length movies that are primary sources that speak to the culture and the history of the time during which they were produced. I'm not actually going to be covering any kinds of videos that the library has that are recordings of maybe guest speakers giving lectures at the library or any other kind of like secondary source recordings. I'm really just going to focus on the primary sources that your students can use or your audience members, along with other types of primary source formats. So, as an example, you might recognize this one here on the screen. This is poor Bert the turtle, who is being approached by a stick of dynamite. And what is he going to do in order to protect himself? He's going to duck and cover. This is Civil Defense for Schools. This was actually created for school children in the 1950s to ostensibly protect them from a nuclear attack. So this is very much a Cold War primary source that we can look back in hindsight and make a lot of comments about. But these are the kinds of primary sources that I'm going to be kind of introducing to you today. So I always have two different search strategies. One, of course, is just to browse and see what kinds of digital collections are available on the topic or format that we're discussing. And the other is a bit more kind of tips for searching under specific topics. And then I'm going to show you a few example digital collections that actually have some really great motion picture primary sources that are really just fun to kind of dig into. So first of all, we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna go to the Digital Collections tab under the main scrolling banner on the home page. And we're going to scroll down on the left-hand menu and look for the original format box and click on the film video category. And this yields 36 different digital collections that have motion pictures in them. That doesn't mean that each of these collections are mostly motion picture primary sources. Sometimes there's only a few motion pictures, and the rest of the primary sources in these collections are manuscripts or photographs or other formats. But some of them have more videos than others, and so that's why I'm going to show you a couple examples of those. One of the best is called Inventing Entertainment, the early motion pictures and sound recordings of the Edison companies, as in Thomas Edison. We'll look at that in a minute. You can see there's a lot of other really great collections. There's city life scenes from New York at the turn of the 20th century, films of President William McKinley. The National Screening Room is one we're going to take a closer look at. Also, and excuse me, I lost my tab. That's what happens when you don't right click and open in a new tab. And of course, the origins of animation, the Katherine Dunham dance videos collection. These are all great. And we're also going to take a closer look at the National Film Registry. There's also the Spanish-American War in motion pictures. This is the first war for which this technology was available. And so that's historically significant in its own right. There's a lot of Theodore Roosevelt videos, including him meeting with suffragists and other types of people. Again, this technology being usable at the time that he's in office. So yes, now another way, let's say you already know that you want to look for motion pictures that are about cars, you want to see some maybe old-timey cars, how cars as a technology and a consumer good have changed over the decades. you can go to the main search box and under everything, you can scroll down to where it says films, videos, and then just type in your subject heading, and then you will get a search results list. It's as easy as that. Usually I don't like to do a plain search from the home page first, but it's actually a good way to look for motion pictures if you screen out the format. Now you'll notice that the first two results don't have thumbnail screenshots. That is because they are actually not available online, despite what it says down here on the left-hand column. If you click on those, what you'll actually get to is online library catalog record for them, and not the actual film itself. So you kind of want to just skip over those and look for the ones that actually have a thumbnail available, and then you will be able to watch them right there on your screen. A lot of these historic motion pictures are silent, of course, for technological reasons, which you'll have to explain to your students and audiences. This is another example of the Thomas Edison ones. And some of them are performances. Some of them are actually candid street scenes where people are just being recorded going about their daily lives. It's just a really great snapshot into American life and customs in the late 19th, early 20th centuries. And you can download them as MP4s or MOV files. Most of them are very short, but there's also just a wide variety of motion pictures from later decades and other collections that are even longer. So another way to kind of narrow down your search results is by date. That's a good way of doing it for motion pictures because you might be looking for a specific era in history. Now, when you see that there are a lot of videos from the 21st century, a lot of those are going to be recordings of people coming to the library and speaking at an event. And so it's not going to be the primary source that you're looking for. So you want to kind of hone in on the ones that are from the 19th and 20th centuries. Now, a lot of the ones that say they're from the 19th century are, maybe it's just because the collection mentions an earlier date. The very earliest one that the library has is dated to 1889. And so it is a street scene from New York City. And so it's very, kind of interesting for all the different things that it shows from from that time period. And then, of course, you can also just search by decade and just get, kind of closer to whatever date you're looking for. So those are some search strategies. Let's take a look at some of these collections in particular that we've already glanced at before. We're going to start by looking at the Inventing Entertainment one, the early motion pictures and sound recordings of the Edison companies. And of course, Thomas Edison, very important American innovator, and he invented and patented a lot of the technology that would be used for the burgeoning motion picture industry. And so this first one that comes up under the featured content is just a man sneezing, a man named Fred Ott, and it's just 28 seconds of the student sneezing. And your students might wonder, why is this significant? Well, it was actually the very first motion picture to get a copyright in the United States. And so it is significant for that reason, because of height. And after that, it just kind of opened the door for so many other things. Now, motion pictures come out of copyright after 95 years, but the library has both a whole lot of motion pictures from 1931 and earlier, but also from later. And we'll take a look at those in a second. But first, I want to show you that remember when you're in a collections page, see if they have any resources under the Articles and Essays tab. These sometimes offer great things for background information for helping those primary sources make sense. and putting them into context. So, for example, this has a whole history section, and within the history of Edison Motion Pictures, there are actually sub-chapters on the origins of motion pictures in general and all the different technological advances that allowed this to happen. Modern audiences are used to a very different type of technology when they watch motion pictures, but that is all building on the steps that came before. So this has a lot of great stuff in it to be used kind of in conjunction with looking at these primary source motion pictures. Now let's take a look at the example of the National Screening Room. So this collection actually does have a lot of examples of motion pictures that fall from, later than 1931, 40s, 50s, 60s, even the 1970s. And they're really great if you're looking at the Cold War and if you're looking at the post-war period in the United States and other kinds of topics falling under modern America. So you can see, for example, I got really excited when I saw that there was a Rolling Stones concert video, but be warned, most of these are going to be silent videos, and so there is no sound that goes along with this one. But it can be culturally important for just talking about popular culture, how the performances looked, how what type of instruments they were playing, and what kind of clothes they were wearing, and what the crowds were like, and all that kind of thing. So, another example, which is a bit different in topic, is this 45-minute long film of the Allied troops liberating Paris, France in 1944. So this would be great if you are researching or teaching World War II. And, there's, of course, a ton of great photographs, but there are also a lot of great videos. And so here's one right here where you can look at the different troop movements and the uniforms. You can see a lot of Paris landmarks in the background after many years of war, what was left, and street scenes of the people there, and how they were kind of interacting with the troops and kind of various things like that. So again, some really great stuff to complement what you're teaching. Now, if you go under the articles and essays tab in this collection, you'll find so much cool stuff. So for example, Kids These Days is a collection of videos that are aimed at the youth population in the immediate post-war period and kind of their moral edification. And so they all seem extremely outdated to anybody who watches them today, but it still kind of gives you an idea of what the concerns were and what the culture was like during this period. This one called Are You Popular? I watched, and it's well, you kind of just have to watch it for yourself. There's actually a blog article that goes along with that one that's linked up here that helps kind of explain it. It's one of those, it doesn't mean to be funny, but it kind of is ones that you just have to watch. But there's some just, really great stuff for popular culture and also what kids' lives were like in different time periods. The Made to Persuade tab is advertising and promotional films. These are, a wide variety of them. The Magic of the Bicycle is a lot of fun, talks about the bicycle over time. I watched this Alice in Freedom Land one. It's an hour and a half, and it's about the Westinghouse Electric Company selling domestic appliances for your household, and the freedom that they refer to is the freedom that these new appliances will now give the modern housewife so that she no longer has to defrost her refrigerator because she can buy a refrigerator that does that for her. And it's just incredibly interesting in terms of women's history, as well as the history of consumer goods and how that changes domestic life, and by extension, the nuclear family and the rise of suburbia in the 1950s. So that one is, yeah, it's pretty interesting to watch. So these are great resources. There's also films that were made kind of like as public service announcements that were um, like mental health problems that young people were having, that maybe some of the older people were having, and just different segments of the population. And this kind of reveals the fears and the anxieties of this age and how they were playing out, especially among the young population, because the parents of this post-war period were really hoping that they wouldn't turn out to be another lost generation, like the young people from the between the wars period. And so there just was all this kind of concern over how to deal with these issues as a society. There's also Sigmund Freud home videos. And then they also link to the National Film Registry from here. You can also get to it from the digital collections page, as we saw earlier. Now, the National Film Registry, it's where the Library of Congress selects a handful of films each year that are deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and worthy of preservation. And so that's what the library does. They conserve the film in digital and material format at the Library of Congress, and then they make them available, the ones for which copyright is not an issue, through their website. And these are not like, the Oscar award winners necessarily. These are the ones that are deemed significant to expressing what American life is like. And so they're good primary sources for American history and culture for that reason. For example, this first one called All My Babies, these have sound, by the way. So do the other ones that are in this collection, the National Screening Room collection. This one is interesting. It's an African American midwife in the 1950s, going around in rural clinics and helping young African American women who needed health care. And so it's interesting from a medical history standpoint as well as a cultural history standpoint. There's the sneeze again because it's deemed very significant. There's Frank Sinatra in The House That I Live In. And some of the ones coming from other collections that we have seen before, the Westinghouse Works collection. Of course, Westinghouse was a rival to Thomas Edison Company. There's great films about their factory and how it worked at the turn of the 20th century. So these are just fantastic resources to take a look at. And so that is all I have time to show you today. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.